At the time, I was believing this lie that, well, I'm having these lustful thoughts and wanting to go look at these things because I'm not married.
You really had to come to that humility point in
Right.
your life of saying, man,
This is beyond
this
me.
is it. This is not something I can get out of. So your victory was recognizing your trigger.
Recognizing my trigger and
Yeah.
start to create some newer habits that were opposite of that.
Welcome to Hope Reforged, the podcast where we champion married couples from pornography addiction to a life of freedom, restoration, and unity. We know the road can be tough, but we're here to walk it together. It's time to break free from the chains of fear and shame. Experience Hope Reforged.
You have a scripture verse for us.
I do, and I've got a coffee cup actually that says this. It's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. And I think that's been a real critical verse for us and how our journey that we've walked through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think back to, the whole process for me, and it goes back a ways because I was introduced to pornography, at a pretty young age in grade school. And I think most people nowadays, especially with the internet, it's something that it's just out there and it's easy to get access to. And I think it's just something you run across a lot, even through social media. It's out there, unfortunately.
You said you were exposed to it in grade school. That was before the internet.
That was before the internet. That was back through magazines and stuff, and friends bringing stuff to school. Friends bringing stuff to school for to share.
Supposed friends.
Yeah. So it's something that was available, not readily, but it was people finding magazines hidden in their house and from brothers and sisters. But usually back then it was, you had to go out and you had to acquire it as opposed to, just getting on a phone or a computer nowadays.
Do you remember? I remember seeing like there were Playboy magazines in the convenience stores, but they were covered.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? Did you have to be a certain age to buy those magazines? Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
So you could actually do what, like find an older friend to get it for you.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Or like I said, there were people that have subscriptions, as adults, that left it in the household and hid it somewhere, and then somebody runs across it and starts cutting out articles and stuff. So
Articles,
yeah. Well, that's what people would say is I read the magazine for the articles.
Oh,
which
that's
is,
right. That's right. I forgot about that.
That's the big bull crap lie people gave. So, but it was something that I was interested in at an early age. I think of my story as kind of like this. I use a lot of movie references and just the way I think and the way that I think the Lord speaks to me. And so there's a movie called Backdraft with Kurt Russell, where in the movie there was a situation where an arsonist was creating this setup to kill basically firefighters. And what he was doing was he was creating a small fire in a room, and then he was like depriving the room of oxygen. And then the firefighters would come along and they would break into the room, and then all of a sudden there was this huge influx of oxygen, and then there would be this explosive combustion that would happen. And so for me, that was kind of what happened, where I was introduced to pornography at a young age, and I would have very little access to it.
You were spoon-fed.
Spoon-fed a little bit here and there throughout, my high school years and early college before we got married. And at the time, I was believing this lie that, well, I'm having these lustful thoughts and wanting to go look at these things because I'm not married, right? And once I get married, I'll then have an appropriate place for this this desire that I'm having to be accessed, a biblical place. Now I'm married. We can have sex, and that'll
24/7.
Now I've got this place, and now I won't need the pornography anymore, and it'll just go away. And that was my thought process. But what had happened is I had learned how to turn to that for stress relief, right? And so even though, our first few years of marriage were great, then I get into a situation where the internet came into our house. We had computers. Initially, it was dial-up.
We bought our first computer.
We bought our first computer.
Like in 95.
Yeah, but even with the dial-up, there was, you could dial up to other special bulletin boards and special phone numbers and get access to pornography directly that way. So it was something, even from a very early point in the internet, pornography was something that you could get access to, and it's just become obviously worse and worse, or more accessible as the years have gone on. But there was this, all of a sudden, for me, there was this explosion of this addiction that came out because, I had direct access to it whenever I wanted.
So that was the backdraft.
That was the backdraft moment for me. Yeah. Yeah. Where, and it became something where, I'm getting up in the middle of the night, while you're asleep, to go look at this stuff. I'm, even got to the point where I'm calling in sick from work, so I can stay home while you're out of the house and looking at the stuff, so it was, and it became something that was completely out of control for me. I was like, all I'm doing is just kind of spending my time and my effort, like finding places where I can access this, points in my life where I can do this, because it's a hollow relationship, right? It's a relationship that doesn't require anything. Marriage is a complex thing with another person in your life that has their own needs and not requirements, but their own expectations. It requires you to invest something into that relationship, right? Whereas pornography is just, I'm going to this website and there's nothing needed from me to get something out of it. So it's hollow, it's fake. It doesn't have the richness that comes out of a marriage and an actual relationship with somebody. There's not the reward of spending time to learn about you and you learn about me and you get to know me and me get to know you, and us to build that relationship and that marriage together, which takes time and effort and it's sometimes difficult.
Laughing together, creating memories.
Yelling at each other sometimes.
Yelling at each other with joy.
Right.
There's, it still feels like a knife to the stomach to hear you talk about your story.
Yeah.
But I know the ending. I know what's on the other side, thankfully.
Yeah.
That's the good news. It is still hard sometimes to hear, I hear you share this story with people in front of groups, with people in various countries, and it's just like, oh, it still hurts.
It's a betrayal.
Yeah, big time. But I do know the man that you are, you were willing to go through this, to go through the process of healing and deliverance and all of that. But
yeah,
you said something about, the marriage, what the marriage requires is investment.
Yes.
And I'm a quality time person.
Yes, you are.
So I love to have time with you. And so for you to go sneak off and be viewing pornography, viewing pornography, which was a lot easier than spending quality time with your wife, was just another level of betrayal. You're giving your quality time to a total stranger that, that I can
not
never,
even a real person, just an image of a person, right?
Yeah, that I can never compete with. And
right.
So it's a high bar that no human can reach.
Yeah.
Today's episode of Hope Reforged is brought to you in part by C12, a nationwide mentoring framework of transformation for Christian business leaders. Find community at joinc12.com.
Me at the time, even though I didn't realize it, this was me dealing with the brokenness in my life as a broken person. This is the outlet I found to deal with the stress and the wounds and the self-doubt and all the other problems I had going on in my life. As opposed to actually facing those issues and dealing with them, this was my way of medicating the pain that I was going through that I didn't even realize I had. At that point in time, these were just the behaviors I had built around my life to make myself feel better at the time. So
we know the why.
Yeah.
So what happened next?
What happened next? So it got to the point where I realized that I was not in a good place, right? I was at a place where I knew this was out of control. It was going to get found out pretty soon, I think, just because it had just gotten so rampant. And, I think there had already been a time or two where, you'd woken up and like come into the office, like, what are you doing? And so it was kind of like, quick, turn off the computer or, to pull something else up. And I knew it was only a matter of time. And so I got to the point where it's like, I don't see a way out. And I have been trying to figure out, is there a program or is there a book I can read? I wanted something where I could get out of this addiction on my own and keep it hidden and didn't have to bring it out into the light. And so after, trying to just willpower my way out of it and making a commitment, I'm never going to do this again. And then, an hour or two later, you find yourself doing, what you said you wouldn't do. And then just realizing, okay, I can't willpower my way out of this. I don't know how to fix this. And coming to a place of thinking, well, the only answer here is I'm broken. And therefore I'm tying Angela down to something that's unhealthy. And therefore the answer is for us to get divorced. Right. And that was my answer to the solution. So I'm upstairs one day sulking around for 3 or 4 hours in the upstairs bedroom. And finally you come upstairs and it's like, Angela, I got to tell you what's going on. And, I'm addicted to pornography. And so we've got to get divorced. And that's the solution I have for you. And just wanted to let you know, here's how it's going to go. Right. And then, of course, you had the moment where upon hearing that, you're like, well, have you tried everything? Well, yeah, I've tried everything. Well, have you gotten help? Have you talked with other people about this? Have you gotten counseling? Well, no, I don't want to do that. That's scary. And that's why would I want to tell anybody else about this stuff I have? I want to fix it on my own. Right. And that's when you said, well, no, I'm not going to sign up for the divorce that you think is the answer for this until you get some help and until we try and walk this out. And at my line of thinking at that point was, well, this is just a box I need to check for her to be able to say, okay, well, we've tried everything. It doesn't work. And now we can move forward with the divorce. Because I really thought divorce was the end answer.
It's the easy answer.
It's the easy answer. It really is. Yeah. And it's the one that requires the least amount of alteration and change and effort on your part. Not your part, on a person's part to address.
I would say, after all the people that we have talked to and, different couples that we've met with, it is the answer in some cases. If it's an abusive relationship.
Well, and so it takes two people, right?
Yes,
And this is, I think, one of the reasons we want to talk to people.
If one of the spouses is not willing to walk this difficult road, this process through.
Absolutely. So, it took you being willing to say, no, we need to go to do this together and to get help together. And me saying, yes, I do want to get out of this.
Because, and I think this is really important to note, is that you found yourself at the bottom of the barrel, not the bottom. You found the end of yourself.
I did.
And you realized you have not, there's no way out of this. And you really had to come to that humility point in your life of saying, man, this is beyond. This is it. This is not something I can get out of. So that was also key.
Yeah. It was. Now, when I said, we'll go get help and we'll go get counseling, I didn't think there was going to be any fruit out of that at the time, but it was like, I'll go do this so that, we can at least say that we've tried everything, so there was definitely a willingness, first of all, on my part, because I wanted to be different than I was. I knew where I was not good. It wasn't what the Bible said, who the Bible said I should be. And I knew there was a different way to live, but I didn't know how to get there. So
I love what you told me the other day. You were spending some time with the Lord, and you heard something from Him. It's Philippians 4. I can't read this. 8 and 9. Keep your thoughts continually fixed on all that is authentic, real, honorable, and admirable, beautiful and respectful, pure and holy. merciful and kind. Fix your thoughts on every glorious work of God, praising him always. Put into practice the example of all you've heard from me or seen in my life. And the God of peace will be with you in all things. God told you.
That's a promise.
That was a promise.
Yeah. See, I've always read that scripture and always thought of it as this is a commandment from the Lord.
To-do list.
Yep. Yep. You got to, these are the things that you need to be working on. And if you don't have these thought processes going on in your life, you're not doing it right. And what the Lord was showing me is that, no, I didn't write this as a thou shalt thing. This is who I'm transforming you into, and this is who you will become. So yeah, that was very encouraging to hear it and see that paradigm shift from the Lord on that. And it is, I think, the process of, when you surrender your life to Jesus, the process of him coming in and renewing your mind, which there's a lot of that needs to happen for most of us because we are broken people. We all walk through difficult things in our life, and we all carry this baggage and these wounds that need to be addressed, and we need to bring the Lord into those things and let him start to bring healing into it. And it's, as opposed to turning to other things, work, gym, food, alcohol, pornography, and looking for those to be crutches and things that we lean on to help us cope with the pain, as opposed to, bringing healing to them and letting the Lord work through those.
We were designed to live without crutches.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, on another day, I'm going to get into my testimony and kind of my perspective on all this. But as far as, once we both made the decision to move forward, to get freedom, and to stay together.
Yep.
I'm trying to remember, did we go to a counselor first and then you found an accountability group?
Yep.
Or, okay.
Yep.
So what all did we do?
So we found a counselor
It's
first.
been a while.
Right. And started talking about, we're heading for divorce. We want to, there's been this betrayal on my part, this pornography addiction, and we want to start talking through these things. And the counselor helping us to realize that we were both kind of stubborn people, and the process of walking that out. Right. And
I remember. I got to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Yep. The counselor had us do this exercise. Like one of our first sessions with him was, okay, now pretend you're going to do an arm wrestle. And so we're in this position, where we're grasping each other's hands and we start like play arm wrestling.
He's like, I got to have my way. And you were like, I got to have my way. And,
I got to have my way. And he just said, just keep going. And we did. We would have sat there all day.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, the point of the exercise was you're supposed to get to a point where we're realizing it was fruitless.
Well, we didn't.
No, we just kept going back and forth and back and forth, back and forth. And the counselor eventually started crying. He's like, I've never had anybody do this before.
For so long.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, our time is up. You can pay me now. No, it was a good example.
Yeah. Yeah. Realized that we both had a little bit of stubborn streaks going on, and we both had some issues that we needed to work out. And that was the start of the process for us in that. Yeah. Which was entertaining now that we look back on it. Right. Because we can see those still are a process of working that out in our lives. But
when submitted to the Lord, that's also a very good feature because we needed that strength to persevere.
Yeah. Yeah. So. It does take a lot of perseverance to get through this. So for us, I mean, there was then the group that I joined, confessing to peers and other guys who were struggling with this, having a mentor that had walked through it before me, and there was a program to follow to help us with, just learning to retrain our brains and develop new healthy habits, to recognize when we were falling back into old habits and how to redirect ourselves.
Before you fell into the old habit.
Right.
Before you relapsed.
And also having a group of people that we could reach out to, as those patterns were starting to rework themselves or to relapse was starting to occur, have somebody you could reach out to. There was transparency between us that we had. that was, I think, critical for rebuilding trust, because trust was something that was severely damaged in this process, obviously. And I know that was a difficult thing, and a long process for you too.
To say the least.
Hmm. Hmm. But the Lord gave me grace to be very open with you. I mean, I gave you access to all the computers that I had. I think you said you went in and changed all the passwords on them, so that I couldn't go back and change things, and you would be able to see what I've been doing with all the computers. I think this is pre-iPhone times.
Yeah, it was.
Hmm. And there's programs out there now like Covenant Eyes and such that you can have accountability partners.
Mhm.
But providing that transparency and building that trust back up with you was a long time process. And for me, it was several years of trying to walk out of this with the group that I was with. And you'd go through months of sobriety, and then you'd have a relapse, and then having to get fall down and get back up again. And that process of just continue to walk it out until the Lord was faithful to bring me out of it completely.
But don't you think that the timeline is personal to each
Oh, absolutely.
individual? I mean, each couple, each individual who's getting freed from this. Because I mean, I've heard of stories of people getting miraculously delivered from
Mhm.
pornography, and just in an instant, they're different, and a new creation, and that's wonderful. I think that's few and far between. I mean, hopefully continues. That would be amazing. But there's also some people that only need a few years. I mean, everybody's different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not saying everybody's going to have this multi-year journey of this. This is where I was, and this is what I had to go through, certainly. But and the miraculous healing, I'm not trying to say the Lord does not do that. I know he does. But my experience, especially with the guys that I've been talking to and the people I've been leading, has been much more of the Lord wants to come in and wants you to partner with him and start to rework your brain, as opposed to I'm going to just come in and just bam, zap, fix you on this. It's much more about, reworking your brain, taking every thought captive, right? And learning how to walk and how to stand in that, how to fight these battles. And that's a journey and a process.
It's a maturity process.
It's a maturity process. Yeah.
And he does that with everybody,
Hmm.
regardless of what our
Issues are.
things are. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And like I said, there's a lot of different addictions that people can have, and things that they can turn to. I know for you, work was one of the things that you leaned into pretty heavy, as a way of kind of not facing some of the pain and stuff that you were dealing with. So it's something I think that everybody has got to deal with on some level.
Tell me about a time that you felt like you achieved a massive victory. You actually realized you were getting free.
So for me, part of the process, I think, developing new habits was, when I was realized that I was starting to head into a place of, I'm getting under more and more stress. I'm seeing my things get a little more out of control, and I'm wanting to pull away from society and friends and family and stuff, and like go into isolation. And isolation is where I would access the pornography, the space I would create for myself in the middle of the night, or, you go do something and I'll have a privacy here to engage in this activity. Instead of doing that, I was, okay, I feel myself being pulled into this. I'm going to turn the other direction, and I'm going to start moving towards a place of relationship, either with you or with other people, so that I don't have that to fall back on, and starting to learn new habits with that.
So your victory was recognizing your trigger.
Mm-hmm. Recognizing my trigger and start to create some newer habits that were opposite of that, or start to turn to, well, instead of this, I'm going to go take a walk, and I'm going to, do some praying, or I'm going to find some time to spend with the Lord, or give this over to the Lord.
Or make a phone call.
Or make a phone
there's
call.
so many,
Mhm.
so many options.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a point for me that I started realizing that I was starting to develop new neural pathways, as opposed to the ones that I had in place that were the unhealthy habits. Was there a point in time where you started to see a change?
Yeah, I do. I remember just just realizing you were treating me differently.
Mhm.
You were treating me with more respect and
Yeah.
honor, and it was, you know, I don't know. I'll talk about that more in my
Mhm.
session where I talk about my testimony. But there was definitely a change in your demeanor and the way that you interacted with people in general. So
Well, and so you start to create lies around the situation too, right? Like, so part of it was, well, my wife and I, we aren't having sex the way I wanted to, or the frequency I want us to, and therefore it's because of this, and so there's this animosity and this uh, unhealthy dynamic that's about well, it's not my problem, it's her problem. That's I think a human uh,
Tennessee.
tendency to say, this isn't my fault, it's somebody else's fault, right? And that's just our way of coping with the shame that we're feeling.
It's that woman you gave me, God.
Right. Yeah. So starting to really face these things and starting to face these lies and having the Lord address them, was where the fruit of that was, starting to see you in a different light in the process. And yeah, so that was a big part of it too. So where would you say we are now on the other side of this thing?
More better.
More better.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I mean, I think our marriage now is something that is a lot stronger than I thought it could have been. We're a lot closer having walked through this. There's a lot more trust between us. Knowing that this thing has been exposed and that we've worked through it together, and now that we're on the other side of it, and now we're also, giving back to other couples and trying to help other people.
We're trying to take back the territory that the enemy stole. I always think about when soldiers go to battle and they're fighting for each other's lives side by side, they come through that and they are lifelong friends, and they know that there's this trust factor now that just can't be broken. I feel like that, which is pretty good.
It is. It's a good place
I like
to be.
it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot more than when we were in the
trench.
the nasty.
Yeah.
All that nasty.
Yep. But we're in a good place now that we've been through the nasty.
Yeah.
All right. Go team.
Thank you for joining us on Hope Reforged. Together, we can break the chains of addiction and rebuild hope. To stay connected, visit us at www.hopereforged.com, where you'll find new episodes, resources, and support. If you found this helpful, please leave us a review and share it with someone who would be encouraged by this podcast. Until next time, persevere, lean into hope, and remember that restoration is yours.